So we're going to build Hello World, and we're going to build it inside of Eclipse, and I'm going to spend a few minutes and go through the different project components and explain to you how this works. So open up Eclipse if you haven't done it already. If you have done it, I have some projects over here on the left hand side. I'm going to close my project over here, actually, the one that was open. So what will end up happening probably by the end of today is you're going to have a whole big list of stuff over here. These are your projects, and it's kind of deceiving. If you delete it from here, you can still keep it. So I have a tendency to delete stuff from here, but I'll still keep it on my system. Where is it on my system? If you just opened up Eclipse for the very first time, you're going to get this prompt that's going to ask you about the workspace. If you select the default workspace, it's going to make sure you look at it, make sure you know where it is. On a Windows system, I believe it's going to be in like my documents, or it's going to be off of C, my workspace. It's not a bad idea to locate your workspace folder. On my system, it's in documents. So if I go to my Go menu, hit Home, and find the documents, which is right here actually, my documents folder, I see one that says Workspace. In my Workspace folder are all of my Android projects. In fact, I have a few more here than I have actually in my Eclipse system. There's a couple of different ways of going about this. We can import projects in, we can export projects out, we can build them in Eclipse, leave them in the project list, and just refer to them back and forth. Or we can remove them and then load them back up when we need them. So don't be fearful. In fact, let me show you something real quick here. If I go back into my Eclipse as an example, and I want to get rid of Hello because I don't like Hello in here. If I right mouse click on Hello and say delete, the first thing it's going to say is it's going to prompt me, are you sure you want to remove the project from the workspace? Well, delete project contents on the disk. If you do this option, you can't bring it back. If I do this option, however, and I say, okay, I got rid of Hello. Hello disappeared in my project list. But Hello is still out here. Here it is. And now I want to bring it back in. So sometimes what you want to do, in fact, when the internet comes back on and you go back into the folder, there's a solution for each one of these projects that we're working on. Some students want to follow along and do it step by step. Some students just want the solution and then they'll watch the solution to see how the final product looks, and then you'll go through it. If you want to do the watch the solution technique, then you're going to download, if you haven't done it already, you're going to download a file. It's be called ap.hello.zip. And if you double click on it, it unzips. This works the same way on a Windows system. And you open up the file, and you're wondering, well, how do I start the project? Different than like iOS environment where you have a project, you just double click on the project and it opens it up. You actually have to import this into Eclipse in order to run the project. So I'm going to show you how to import it in. I'm going to pull the folder out of my workshop directory though, because I want to import it in fresh, which is what you're going to end up doing. So if I go to Documents, I go to the Workspace, take this Hello folder, and I'm going to move it out here onto my desktop. Now I'm going to put it back in. So how am I going to put it back in? In here, I'm going to come up here to the File menu. So I'm now in Eclipse, and I'm going to the File menu, and I'm going to select Imports. And I've got some options. I can import an archive, a file system. I want to import an existing project into the workspace. So then I'm going to click Next. And now I'm just going to click on the Browse button here and select the project folder. It should automatically identify it as an Android project. So if I find the desktop and I find Hello, I don't actually have to click any further than that. I just click on Open. If I click on Open, I get out here and it says, Hello, I found Hello. So what you want to do is see something in here. So you can have multiple projects all in the same folder, and it should list them here. And then you click on the one you want, like I want this one here. So then I'm going to click on Finish. I could actually add the project to a working set. Let's not worry about that right now. I'm going to keep everything separate at this point to simplify it. I could build it from an archive if I have an archive file, if it's inside of another file, another folder. I'm not going to. If I click on Finish, I've got the project back. And here it is right here. So if you're the type who wants to look at the finished solution and you don't want to worry about having to build it, you have the pressure, oh, I can't follow the steps and you're going too fast. Yes?
So what are those files?
What are the files?
Yeah.
What do you mean by what are the files? In here, that file is a completed project.
Nothing here. Like
Oh.
Website or...
Oh, where are the files?
Yeah.
Well, if I could get to the website, let's see if it's back up yet. Nope, not back up yet. When the internet comes back up, it is on bhacker.com. If you were here in the beginning, I showed it to you, but not everybody downloaded them. Those files, the finished projects, are all stored on the website, but I can't get to it right now because I don't have internet access. But it's at bhacker.com. Click on Spring 2013. Click on the Android class. Click on Tutorials. If you click on Tutorials, you'll get the PDF files as well as the zip files. When it comes back up, I can take a look at that. So if you don't have this, don't worry about it. We're not going to get too far through this. You don't need the finished product, but I'm trying to show you if you're a type of person who wants to just look at the finished product and not worry about having to build it, don't worry about it. It's available for you, and this is how you import it into the project. So I'm going to close it because I'm going to start fresh. So I'm not going to use the finished product. So let's build our first Android project. You can do this without the internet. Don't need it. Yes.
Go back to the slide behind it where you have this instruction.
Oh, yes. I was not showing you the imports in here. I was showing you the import outside of this tutorial. We're going to start in with these instructions right now. We're going to, if you don't have the PDF file, if you do have it, this is ap/hello, the first one on the tutorial list. Once the site comes back up, you can download it. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. I'm really not going to follow it anyway. But if you get lost, it might help you. Let's just put it up for visual purposes here, and let's just create an Android project. So go ahead and open up your Eclipse if you haven't got it opened up already. I close everything here so I don't accidentally click on the wrong folder, and I don't mess up something I already have. So let's go File, New. And you see we got a bunch of options up here. The old days it used to say Android project up here. Mine says Java project. Yours may not say that. It probably does. Go down to Other, the bottom of the list. We want to go down to Other. If we go down to Other, and by the way, this is also being recorded as well, so you can go back and look at the video as well and catch up. So now in the Other, if I've never done this before, it looks like this. And I have a bunch of stuff to look at. I have a bunch of stuff installed on here. You might not have all of these options. You might just have Android stuff. Depends upon the version of Eclipse that you have installed. If I click on Android to open it up, I have Android activity. We don't even know about activities yet, but we're going to put activity inside of a project later on. But let's not worry about that. I just want to create the application project. So what I'm going to create here, I'm going to create the wizard for the Android application project. We can also do icon sets, objects. We can actually do an Android project from existing code that's not in an Eclipse project. But this is the one here you're probably going to select the most often, Android application project. Go ahead and click on Next. Now we get this intimidating window. We're looking at this window going, oh wow, what am I going to do here? Well, I have Froyo installed. I have 2.2, I have 2.3. If you don't, yours isn't going to say API level 8. Yours is probably going to say 17 all the way across the board. Don't worry if this on my screen doesn't match what's on your screen. It depends on how many APIs you have installed. I'm going back to a Froyo because I'm going to run it in a 2.3 emulator, and we're going to talk about emulators in a few minutes. You might still be downloading other API versions. Something should show up in your particular list. So give it an application name. You can't use spaces in the name. It has to be one complete name. So I'm going to call this Hello Today. So you can use underscores. You can go like that if you want. You just can't use any spaces or any special characters in the name of the project. Unlike iOS, where you can put spaces and everything in there if you wanted to. But so package name and project name are going to be application name and project name. Application name is what's going to show up when you run the device on the when a person installs the device on the phone. It's going to say hello today on there. So it happens to be the same. I'm going to call it the same thing as my project. I can call my project, number 1 or something. Give it a different name, and then I can have many different versions of the same hello today or something. Package name. By default, you get com example hello today. It's the exact opposite. In fact, it's the reverse of a URL. So I actually, for all of the examples that you're going to see, I usually change. You can leave it at the default. I usually put in edu.itu because it's coming from that's why I can keep the examples separate for the packages. And then all my examples say edu.itu for the package names. Because when I cut and paste code from examples, it all says edu.itu on it. This is easier. I probably should turn it back to com example. But until the recent version of this API, recent version of this toolkit, it wasn't putting anything in, so you had to make something up on your own. So you'll see some examples that just say com. It's the exact opposite of example.com. com.example. Yeah? Oh, did I make a mistake? EDI, edu. Thank you. .itu. Thank you. We're going to leave everything else on its defaults. And go ahead and click next. So now you're going to think, well, I've never created an Android project before. Now I got more options to look at. Oh, yeah. What am I going to look at here? Create a custom launcher icon. Sure. Create an activity. Sure. Create project in Workspace. Sure. What's this other one? Make this project as a library. Nah, we don't need a library. We don't need to make a library out of this. It's like making a DLL project or making. Remember before I said we can make libraries that work on top of it? We want to make an application. We're not making a library. So this is going to be a regular old library. Leave the defaults. So you should use a custom icon. Create custom launcher icon. It's going to stick a little Android guy in there. It's going to be called ic_launcher.png. Don't worry about the naming right now. I'll show you where that is in a few minutes. It's going to be a generic. Instead of your application not having an icon, this is the icon that shows up. User clicks on the icon, runs your application. Instead of that not being there, it's just going to put a generic one in there. It's going to be a little Android. In fact, it looks very similar to that little Android symbol. Create an activity. So the basis of all Android applications are by objects that are being created. The base generic type of Android application is an activity. I'm going to go through, after lunch, I'm going to go through all of the different types of things that we can have in here. We can have services, activities, content providers, a bunch of stuff that we can put into the project. An activity, for our purposes right now, is just going to do something for us. And it's going to put up a screen, and the screen's going to say hello world, actually. So it's not going to be too elaborate. Creating the project in the workspace, you can actually change the location. I'd stick everything in the workspace. And this is the workspace folder that I gave it when I first loaded up Eclipse, and it asked me to specify which workspace I wanted to use. If you don't like that, you can switch it, but I'd put it all in the same location. That way I can visually tell which ones are my Android apps and which ones are my other apps or other projects. Go ahead and click on Next. Now this is a new screen they added to the original version of the API that never used to have this screen. Because I don't know why they're having it right now anyway, but configure the launcher icon. At this point, I don't even know what icon I'm going to use. I don't have an icon. Actually, I do have one. I have an ITU logo icon. But I don't know if I'm going to use it. I never actually set it here. I'll set it later. But these are all the different versions. And you see it says MDPI, HDPI, XHDPI. It's kind of like the Retina versus the non-Retina icon if you're in the iOS world. Or it's kind of like, what icon do I want to use depending upon the resolution of the screen the user has. At this point, I'm not even going to commit to an icon. I don't want to commit to an icon, so you don't have to commit to an icon. So this is a brand new screen they put in there. I'm not sure why they did that. You can change the background color. All the stuff that you're doing in the setup, running these wizards, you can change after you've already created the project. So I'm going to leave this alone. I'm just going to click on Next. And now it's going to ask me, because I selected to create an activity, wants to know what kind of activity do I want. This is also one of those new screens that they put in there. We're going to build this from scratch. So I'm going to say a blank activity, which is the first option on the screen here. The full screen activity is very similar. It's leaving out bars on the top and the bottom. It's just giving you a full blank screen. And I'll show you the screen in a few minutes. Or the new master detail flow. I just built it myself. So that's going to give you different types of window interfaces with different default things. You're only picking out default items that are going to appear on the screen. You're not setting anything in stone. Everything's changeable. So go ahead and click on next. Now I usually leave it on main activity. So if those people who have a C background, you know we have main. That's kind of the equivalent. Main activity. It's kind of like main, void main, or indent main. It's going to be the starting point. So I like the word main. Some people in the old days, actually this used to be called, in our case, because I called this thing Hello Today, it would be Hello Today activity. You know, it's usually the name of the project that's in there. I'm going to leave it on main. The layout manager is going to be the name of our XML file that we're going to use on the layout. In the old days it used to say main. Now it says activity underscore main. I'm going to leave that one alone as well. The navigation type, we're not going to cover that today or right now with this project, but if we wanted to put in tabs on the bottom, drop-down lists, menus, all sorts of different things, let's just leave the navigation on none. In the iPhone, this was also brand new stuff that was added to be more compatible with the iPhone development, because on an iPhone you can create tab-based applications. You know, you can have navigation bars, and navigation is basically going to have you go one screen to another screen to another screen. You know, in different ways. But let's just start with a basic blank. So none. Go ahead and click on finished. When you click on finished over in the left-hand side of the screen over here, you're going to see this new Hello Today in my case. I got my little thing going. It does take a few minutes to build the application. If you see a red thing here, don't be concerned. It means it hasn't saved something yet. So the way you know you have an error, and I'll introduce an error so we can see it in a few minutes, is that we'll have a little red X that appears everywhere. And those little red X's are kind of irritating. We used to have yellow ones, but those are gone too, so it's no problem. So what ends up happening is the project opened up, and now we're looking at this screen here. I'm going to try to make the screen a little bit bigger for those people who are looking at this, who are relying upon this because they don't have it on their system. You don't need the internet access, by the way, to do this. So you do sort of need Eclipse installed, though. Alright, so this is, what we're looking at here is the interface, well, it would be equivalent to what's called an interface builder. I'm going to get rid of this console on the bottom here. So by clicking the window, we have a bottom section, very similar to Xcode actually. We have a bottom section, we have top sections, side sections. So your screen might look a little different. If you have a box over here, I've already removed mine because I don't like it. I like the Project Explorer. If you go into the window, you can actually put things back, show views. You know, show views, and you can show the Project Explorer again if you accidentally get rid of it. So if you delete a window and you kind of want the window back, go to the Windows menu and find the window again and put it back. It's not going away permanently. So I'm going to actually kind of close this window out here. It makes it a little easier to read. And kind of go through the project for you. For those of you who have the downloaded tutorial, what we're doing is we're going through this Advanced Hello World app. We've gone through the first 9 steps to create the Android app. Now we're going to take a quick tour of the app to see what's in there. In our Package Explorer. Our Package Explorer is this window that's on the left-hand side. Package Explorer. I kept calling it Project, but it's called the Package Explorer. So let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger here. There we go. So I'm going to start at the top and kind of work my way down, and then go back to the tutorial and see what I missed. This is the package name. I gave it during the wizard when I first created the package, and it was edu Hello Today. Everything that's going to be in this package is going to be sort of like a directory. It's like a subdirectory. We can have multiple packages in the project, and we can load different things in different packages. What does that mean? Well, it all belongs to a certain set. It's all part of a group. It's a package. Think of it like a directory structure. Packages are kind of tricky to work with. So in the beginning, so just leave one package and put everything in the same package, and then you'll make your life easier. So for those people who are not familiar with Java, this is equivalent to a C file. It's a It's called mainActivity.java. If I double click on the file, it opens it up in the right hand side of the screen over here in a few minutes. And I can see at the top here I've got package. Well, all of my files are going to have the package in there. And as I was mentioning before, this is not really a Java programming course, so I'm not going to go through packages. If I covered Java as well as Android, we wouldn't get very far. So you just have to kind of assume that you're going to be working with this package concept, kind of like a directory structure. Imports are equivalent to includes for your C++ people or C people. We're including, and this is interesting, is android.os.bundle, android.app.activity, and Android view menu. This is actually kind of a new thing they started adding to the defaults. So on the phone, on the tablets, there's this menu button. Sometimes you press the menu button, it brings up a menu. That's what that's about. So you can add stuff to the menu. Your activity is your running process. It's the program, the app that you're creating that's running. The bundle, that's actually what I showed you on that slides we were looking at earlier. That's the framework. We're working on the OS bundle, which is the on top of the that's working with those core libraries. That's all that functionality you're getting from the operating system. That's why it's called OS for Operating System Bundle. It's all the support that you're getting for the underlying operating system, which is going to be generic because it's going to work on all Android kernels. So now we have a class definition. The class definition is in a file called capital main.java. It's main activity. For those people who have some Java experience, I'm going to kind of go through this a little bit. If you don't, you're going to be kind of sort of at a slight disadvantage. So it's not a bad idea to take a Java course if you're going to get into this, so you can actually understand the code that you're writing, which Java is pretty easy as a language. Public class, well, public, we're going to need to be public because public, private, protected. It needs to be public so we can see it, we can run it. It's the main activity of the project. We might have some protected or some private classes in the future projects. It basically allows us to specify our exposure. Who's going to be able to see this? Other classes or just this class or main? And this is really main in here actually. So main activity is the name of the class. This is the class definition that we're looking at. Extends activity. This is inheritance. This is equivalent to colon activity or colon something in C++. In Java we use the word extends for inheritance and implements for interfaces. And in Java we only have one file, a .java file. We don't have a .h and a .c++ file. So if you are a C++ program, hopefully that helps you kind of put it into perspective. One file per class. Every class belongs in its own file. So we have these little things in here, override. It's from inheritance. We're actually overriding this method. The method that we're overriding is onCreate. Every single activity that you create will have an onCreate. OnCreate's are like main. It's like every C++ program or C program you write has main. If you don't have main, you can't write it. Oh, we have to have a creation. If we don't create the activity, we're not going to be able to run it. So onCreate is going to give us our initial running of this app. So that method is going to be in there. This is the template that we're looking at. It's not doing anything really. It's just basically going to open up a screen for us. But it has all of the necessary components, and we're going to run it. We're going to see it actually does work. And then if you're familiar with inheritance, it's super.onCreate. So it's going to run the super class, which is activity. So it's going to create the activity for us. What we're doing is we're going to essentially make this instance of this object that's going to be the activity automatically by the manifest. And I'm going to show you the manifest in a few minutes. It says, run this class. Okay, so it makes an instance of the object, and then this object here, inside of here, we can make instances of other objects. And we can add new objects to the project is what the goal of what we're going to do here. This, just take it as a de facto standard saved instance state. Well, yeah. It's the information that's going to be sent. I'm going to talk about the app lifecycle, but the app has an instance. So we make instances of objects, and I'm going to use this terminology over and over again. We instantiate the object when we run the object. When we run the object on the Android phone, it could be paused, it could be stopped, it could be killed. The instance has a lifecycle to it, and we can manage the lifecycle to it. And by doing this, every time we click on the app to open it up. Well, if it's already running, we don't want to restart it. So we can get the resume state. So saved instance state is going to be from where did you leave this app? What did you do with this thing last time you ran it? It's going to automatically be invoked on the onCreate. So we're going to create it, we're going to bring it up in the memory, we're going to load it, and we're going to get, oh, it was resumed, so bring it back to the resume state. Or it was doing this, so bring it back to that, which is what functionality we're going to get automatically. All this stuff is extremely automated for us. So we just have to remember that this is the de facto standard. Don't ever change this. Those two lines will always appear on every single onCreate that you're going to get. You start changing that, then you get an app that works funny. It doesn't load up automatically or does something weird. So set the content view. Well, it's like model view controller for those people who know object orientation. If you don't, it's the view. It's the view. It's the window. It's the content that you're going to show to the user. So we have our views, which is going to be part of our resource. So let me show you something. I'm going to kind of leave this up over here. I'm going to kind of minimize the stuff over here. And look to see what these other folders are giving us. We have a GEN folder, and in the GEN folder we have an r.java file. I can actually open up the r.java file. Never, ever, 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 ever edit this file. In fact, don't even open up this directory. If it says generated Java files on it, leave it alone. Eclipse is generating it for it. Any change you actually make to this file is going to be overridden by Eclipse. I'm opening it up right now. This is the last time I'm going to open it up. It should be hidden. Resource. R stands for resource. R.java is a file that gets created by all of the contents of the resource directory. Why? Because this is Java, and all the resources are written in XML. So inside Eclipse in the compiler, we have an XML parser. Parses the XML code, turns it into Java code for us. Automatically by the JVM, automatically by the compiler. So when we start touching this, well, next time we save the project, it's going to be updated again. Automatically, constantly goes through and recreates the r.java file. All the files that we're using in here, if they're icons, if they're XML files, if they're text files, everything gets converted to Java because we're only running Java on that Android device. So in here we see final, which means it's not changeable really. It's not being altered. Class R. So when we go r.drawable, r.id, r.layout, we're pulling different resources out up here in main. And here's the other trick too. So I've clicked on the r.java, but I have this tab over here. It says main activity. Over here I've got r.layout. So if I go to the R and I look at that, I go .layout. Well, that's going to be my my activity underscore main. Where's my activity underscore main? It's right here. It's in the layout subfolder. So we have this whole big old folder of stuff, and I'm going to go through the folder in a few minutes. It gets converted to a Java file, and then the Java file gets compiled in, and then it's kind of like going for a property in R, because so now we have methods and properties. So in object orientation, this is purely object orientation. This turns into r.class. If we make an instance of r.class, well, we are actually, we're making it in here in our main. We're setting the context view to r.layout.activity menu, which is defined actually in here. And here's our activity menu here. Activity main, excuse me. Oops, up here. Actually, the menu is set to the activity main as well, it looks like. Which is making reference to this XML file. If I click on this XML file, let's just see, what is this XML file? That's what we got originally when I opened up the program. But the XML file is really XML code. It's on the bottom of this file. It says graphical layout. I mean, go ahead and play around with this. You can actually at this point. Don't change the r.java file though. Click on where it says activity main.xml. Now you see, maybe you might see what I'm talking about here. It's XML code. So it's taking XML code, it's turning it into Java, and it's referencing it as the layout. And it's calling the layout activity underscore main, which is the same name as my XML file. So, can't stress it enough, never, ever go into this directory. Build configurations will also cause you problems as well, unless you know what you're doing. And this is automatically generated, you're never going to get rid of that. Actually, build configuration is not going to do anything for you either. Why did they stick this in here? Personally, I would have taken it out or made it hidden. I don't even know why they show it to you. Seriously, when you're not supposed to touch it. Another directory, I don't know why they show you this one either, is your packages. Your jar file. So this one here is created for 4.2. It will be supported all the way down. 4.2 is compatible. Everything's backward compatible. You're just not forward compatible. So if I built the project for 2.3, I can't run it on a 4. Well, I can, but it's not going to be. I'm taking my chances. But everything is backward. So for 4, I can run it on a lower device. But these are your jar files, and the jar files actually are located here in the Android SDK. You can kind of see where it's coming from here. Android 17. Oh, when you go through that downloaded window, this is where you're getting those jar files. And this is the base functionality of the SDK that we're loading in. So this is the Android SDK. Why that's in there, don't know. Android dependencies, again, if we have PhoneGap, if we have third-party utility, we install it and we make a dependency, which means that it's going to use this library. It shows up over here too. Why show it to the user though? It's all done through the menu. So I guess you can use it for troubleshooting. Assets. Empty folder, I have no assets. I'm broke. No assets. What does that mean? If I had a text file, if I had a web page, HTML file, if I have a Word file, PDF file, anything that's not associated with the project, not an Android thing, is my Hello World text file. My PDF file is not really Android related. But it goes in the asset folder because it's one of those assets that I can use further down the road. So I can drag and drop it into the folder if I want to. And kind of see how, see what's going to go on with that. So, and use it in my project. Bin folder. Well, haven't built anything yet. But the bin folder's got my manifest in it. It will also have an APK file in it the first time I run it. So we'll notice right now I haven't run this project yet, so I haven't built it yet. But the bin folder is going to hold the executable file that I can install on my device and do something with. And we'll get through that part hopefully before lunch as well. So, because all I'm going to do right now is just run it and show you the pieces of it. Libs, don't touch that either. It's just going to be the libraries that are being used. It's like your includes, but everything's included, and it's always included in Android support, which is the OS bundle, which is going to give us everything. So don't worry about the libs. Resources. People like the resources. That's the fun part of programming. The UI, the GUI stuff. So in the resource folder, this is what makes it confusing. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drawables. Those are, if you remember that screen that had the icon on it right at the beginning, for each one of the resolutions. So if I open up this directory here, I see launcher.png. If I double click on it, I see launcher. It's my little launcher guy. That's the icon that shows up for the project. It used to show up over here, now it shows up in a little window in preview on my screen. But if I come into here, I see launcher. Come into here, I see launcher. Supports PNG, JPEG, GIF, your common formats. BMP, I think it actually supports that now too. So it'll get converted. So depends on what the compiler can work with, which is practically almost every file type these days. So these are my icon images, and I'll show you in a few minutes how to change it. Before we're going to create an elaborate non-functioning application, really. Yeah.
Just placing the images in these folders will work, or do we have to?
I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you that. I haven't gotten to the manifest yet. When I get to the manifest, I'll show you how to change the icon for the application, because that's what everybody wants to do to begin with. So, all right. So now we have our layout. Our layout is our XML interface. Our XML interface is going to give us our GUI. That's the thing that we've been looking at the most right now. We have the graphical version of it. We also have the XML version of it. I'm not going to mess around with the layout till after lunch, because that's when people can really explore. Menus. We don't really have anything. We just have a blank menu called activity_main. And it's just going to be a GUI system where we can add menu items. We're not going to work with menu items until later today or possibly tomorrow as well. And what else do I got here? Values. We will work with values today. We have string values and styles. So what we can do is keep a global list of all the strings we're going to use in the application. And then we can apply localization to the application and say, this is going to be French. So we have a French string library, we have an English string library, we have a German one, whatever, you know. We create the string in here. This is the string. One of the strings we have for hello world is we have the application name, which is hello today, and the menu system, that's about it, and hello world. So actually I can change the string here. I'll change the string to today is the day or something. I don't know, because it's hello today. So I changed my string, so when we see when I run my program, it looks slightly different than yours. So these are all strings for values that we're going to use in all the different components of the application. Yes?
It says action settings for me and menu settings for you.
Where does it say action settings?
Instead of menu settings, it says action settings.
Menu settings. Oh, over here?
Yeah.
It might be the version you have. Does everybody say, well, it could be menus or actions. Do you have one that just says app name, probably, in hello world? And don't worry about the naming. They've just, through the different versions of the APIs, they've changed the names. This is really the menu. So, if not, you can add one that says menu on it and use it, because I'm going to show you how those are used in a few minutes. So, actually, I'll just show you right now because it's easier. So we have this string called, the string is named hello_world. We're actually using this string, and the string is actually going to be in our layout. So I'm going to go back to my layout here. I'm going to switch it, double click on, save it. And on the top, you can just go like this and go close. When you close it, if you've made changes, or close it. There we go. Save changes? Yes. Every time you run the project, it actually saves it for you automatically as well. So you don't have to worry about that. So I'm going back to my layout, double clicking on my layout, and I'm going to click on the XML file. See where it says string at string hello world? That's the string. So if yours isn't called hello world, yours is called activity something, or you can change the name of it actually. Add a new one in there. But your menu is going to be called something else is what the difference is. So this is where it's going to use that string. So if, for example, I change the language of this application to be in a totally different language, all I had to do is come up with one file, which is all of the keys with all of the values in a different language. This is the key. The key is hello world. The value that's associated with it, hello world, is today is the day on my screen. So it's like a dictionary lookup of strings. We have a project we'll be doing before the end of the weekend that will emphasize this point. We'll create some strings and we'll load the strings into a selection box and we'll use it. So you want to at all times use as many strings stored in the system as possible, because what you can also do here, and I'll show you a bad thing to do, it's not really bad, but a non-preferred method. If I take this out as an example, I can just put in here hello world. But every time I change the program language, or I want to make it more international, and let's give this app to this other market, I got to go back through like 1,000 different places and change all these strings. Not so good. If you put them all in one area, you have a typo, you're only gonna, it's the same word's going to be as if I misspelled hello. I only have to change it one spot. I don't have to change it everywhere else. Oh, you know what? The president of the company is resigning. We have a new guy. Okay, put his name in here. You know, just change it one part. Or the company's changing name. So a question that had come up was how do you save it once you make the changes. I'm not going to save it at this point. I'm just going to press the button here, the X, to close the tab. You can also right mouse click on the tab and close it. Depends on what you like doing. In this particular case, I don't like that change, so I'm going to say no, and I'm not going to save it and close the tab. And when I close the tab, it's going to update something else usually. So every time you save something, it's going to go through and update everything else that has a reference to it, because I'm going to introduce an error in a few minutes, and you can see where that's kind of terrible. That's kind of bad, Actually, I can introduce an error right now. I can change this name and put a Q in front of it and save it. And now you see over here on the right hand side, I got these little square boxes because it's Q hello world. So if I click on here, I'm going to go, well, what's wrong with this? Well, look at that. It doesn't know it. But then if I come back here, and I come back to the strings. Okay, let me fix the error then. There's no error over here. There's no problem with this one. Let's take the Q out. Now, you know, I haven't saved it yet, but I fixed it. It's not updated yet. So I constantly save by habit because now I'm going to go, oh, I still have this error. What's wrong with the error? I just changed it. It's not real time. So I'm going to close it now. I'm going to save it. And in a few seconds, you're going to see this go away. It goes away. So that's kind of like how you're going to do it. And you're going to, I'll show you later after lunch, when you hover your mouse over, it'll give you some options. And you can kind of select a few things that you're going to do as well. All right, so that's our string. So those are in our values. Values V11, V14, they're for the different version systems. Don't worry about them for right now. They're just different versions of values that we're going to set for different utilities that we're going to use in the different APIs. We've made it down to this one here where it says Androidmanifest.xml, the most important file in the entire project. This is like the main configuration file. So I'm going to actually spend a few minutes here and look at the manifest from an XML point of view, because this doesn't this gives you all the properties that are set, and it gives it to you in a easier to navigate kind of fashion, but it doesn't really explain what's going on. So it's setting the package for us, it's setting the version code, it's setting the name. But here's the trick here, uses SDK. Well, I have the minimum set on 8. That's 2.3.3. So the SDKs are numbered. About 6, I believe, is about as low as you want to go on device support, because then there's significant changes beneath that. So you don't want to go any older than that. 8, this guy's running at 8. So if I had this app, if I had this device and I want to download something from Google Play, your app wouldn't support it if you didn't go down to a minimum of 8. Which, you know, you don't want to block users. You want everyone to install your app. So if you go down to 8, you're going to get the 2.3 people, which is about 2 years old, 3 years old. Or you can go as high as 17, which is 4.2, Android release 4.2. So here's where you're basically setting the release of the software that you're going to install it on, or the Android system that you're going to install this app on. For the application, we're going to leave this for right now, but what we're doing is we're setting the string as the application name, the style as the app theme. We're going to look at styles, we're going to look at these things. The drawable icon, okay, for those of you who this is your first app, so you want to like at least put an icon in there. So this is coming from drawable. These are the drawable directories. So find an icon that you like. I believe I have an icon, and here's an icon. Let's see. I think I have an icon in hello, actually. Let's see. Oops, no, I'm sorry. Resource, drawable. Here's an icon. Copy it here. Copy. Paste. I just pulled one out of an old project that I have. Go on the internet, find an icon. This icon in size is 57 by 57. I wouldn't go any larger than 60, actually. No, it can be a PNG, it can be a JPEG, it can be a whatever, GIF, whatever. Anything that's compatible with the web is usually compatible with the Androids these days. So you find the icon that you like. This one happens to be called icon.png. I'm going to make this screen a little bit smaller. I'm going to just stick it in the first one, the HD PI. We also have the ability to just create another one here. And let's say I just want to create one called drawable. It'll basically go through the one of the least significant, the lowest resolution, and load that one first. And then it goes to the next highest, next highest, next highest, next highest. It'll start with drawable by default if you put it in drawable, but it should work in here. If we wanted to add it, we'd go File, New, and then we'd put in here Folder. And then I can put in the folder, I can call this one, make sure it's in the reserve, in the resources subdirectory. RES stands for resources. And it's not capital, drawable. Now I've added a drawable one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take and drag it. See how I have a plus on it? So I took it from the desktop. I got a little plus on there. I'm going to drag it. I'm going to stick it in this one. And I'm going to copy it in here. instead of moving it, I'm just going to copy it. Don't really need to do that actually, because I can drag and put it over here too. I can put it in all of these folders. If I really want to do it right, I just put it in all of these folders, because who knows what the user's going to have. Some people like to get rid of all the folders and just put it in one. If you put it in one, it's whatever resolution you have, it's drawable. But you're going to tell it where it's coming from. So you're saying here, drawable. If I don't have a drawable, if I have a drawable, it's actually going to pull it from drawable. If I don't actually have a drawable, I have a drawable -HDPI, and I have one that says -LDPI and MDPI and all these other ones. It just goes for which is the first one in the list that matches the resolution that is compatible with the device. So higher devices will hopefully use the higher resolution one. You can actually specify it here as well and not use the generic. Just find me a drawable. Load it in by dragging and dropping it and putting it into a folder. Now when I run the app, we are going to run it. If I run the app, you'll see that the icon will change to my icon. It'll look like this one here instead. And it's the icon that's being used in the app. So I don't have to, I do have to change the name, so I'm going to go back in here. I'm sorry. Go back into the manifest. We changed the name. I called this one icon. The one that was in there was icon launcher. I want to run icon. So I'm going to open up my resources again, and I'm going to go into manifest, which is in the resource folder. And over here I'm going to change it. It says icon launcher. I'm just going to change it to icon. You don't put the file extension in, just the name of the file. Because the extension goes away when you compile it. It all gets converted to Java. So you're not going to say what it is. It's just going to put one in there. I happen to have been loading in a PNG. Yeah, PNGs are pretty good. Nope. Yeah, I can take out the draw. Actually, here, let me take out the drawable folder. Delete it. Are you sure you want to delete drawable? Yeah, let's delete drawable. No, it'll find it in drawable.hdpi. It goes through all the drawables. So wherever you put that icon, it'll find it in the folder. If I put a different name here that doesn't exist, so this one here, let me just make sure that I'm good at this point. No typos, no messages, we're all good. Let's put a name in that doesn't exist. Icon doesn't exist. And save it. Now you see I got this little ugly little, whoops, can't get to it. Oh, here we go. No. Plus, there we go. I'm trying to make the screen bigger. I had this little ugly, it's not really that ugly, but this little red thing here. So if I click back on the manifest and open it back up again, I'm going to say, well, drawable doesn't exist. And I put my thing over here. It says, error, no resource found that matches the given name at icon with variable. Oops, if I make it smaller, you can actually see the message. I give a name at icon with variable drawable. Drawable doesn't exist because that's not what the file is called. But I don't have a drawable folder over here. I have these with extensions on it, but it starts out drawable. So we'll look at one of these for the resolution that you're looking for the default resolution of the device. So I'm going to change this now and fix it, make it work pretty here.
Suppose if we have the images of different resolution.
That's what you're doing. You're putting the higher resolution ones, or the ones that are specified for HDPI in here, ones for the bigger XX HDPI in here. So you can actually load in different quality icons that are going to show up at different qualities for each one of the devices you're going to load this app on. So now you see I made this change and I'm like, okay, what's wrong? Well, the X isn't going to go away immediately. There's no instant gratification, so I'm going to have to save it. And then the X will go away. So now I'm back to normal. So now everyone's biggest next question is, well, how do I run this thing? Don't need a device. You need an emulator. How do you get an emulator? Well, you have to create one if you've never created one before. So you can do it in two ways. You can do it while you're running it. How do you run it? Well, you click on the project. In fact, what I like to do is just kind of close the project so I know where I'm clicking. Not close the project, I'm sorry, minimize the project. There's a little arrow here. If I click on the arrow, it collapses everything down into one single line. If I right mouse click on the project, I get this little menu that comes up. And in the menu, I can go Run As. And I can select Android application because this is really an Android application. If I don't have any emulators defined, it's going to set me, it's going to say, hey, you need to define an emulator. Do you want to do it now? Or we can go in and we just can create some emulators. And then when we run the project, it'll run it in the emulator. So let's create an emulator because it's a little bit more straightforward to do it that way. We can also run the project up here with the, project. We can build automatically, we can clean it, there's some objects for the project, or we have the run next to it, where if we run it, it'll just run it as a default configuration. So, up here into the window directory, the Sdk Manager is what you're going to use to get 8, 10, 14, 17, all the different SDK versions. Some of you have already visited that menu back when we had internet access. We might have access again, I'm not sure, I haven't checked in a while. This is why we want Android Virtual Device Manager. The Virtual Device Manager, if you click on it, I have some devices created. I'm going to create a new one. I have a device created for 2.3.3. I have one for 4.0. Your screen's probably going to be empty right now. If it's empty, click on the new. Click on the new. Then you quickly discover which ones of those SDKs you have installed. So I like to use a naming convention that's kind of interesting. It says Android 2, Android 4, Android 4.2. I don't know why that's 4.2 even though it's using a 4.1.2. That way you know which one it is. If you just go here and say Emulator, how do I know what it is really? How do I know which one, I don't know what it is. Because we're going to create an entry to create an emulator that's going to represent something. So I'm going to say this is Emulator 4. I'll just call it 4. But underneath it, it's going to say device. So, going back to that lecture I gave you, this one's going to have a Galaxy Nexus, a Nexus. I think the new Google device actually shows up, but I don't have it installed. I don't have the support for it. So the emulator is a fake phone, or a fake tablet, or fake something. So you can install different emulators of different manufacturers if you have the access to the downloads for it. I can do it for a Galaxy Note. I can do it for anything. I'm just going to pick. I'm going to pick Galaxy Nexus. I'm just going to pick Galaxy Nexus. It just says, because it's going to give me a pretty standard looking emulator. In the old days it just said emulator and it just said, any device you want. Or you can go Nexus over here, lower the resolution. And then you see underneath where it says target, you'll automatically see something filled in. Now it says target is 4.1.2. And then if you open up the window here, you have other options. Well, I'm not going to see that many options. I'm going to see the options that will work on this device. So it's going to tell me which APIs actually work on the device that I've selected. Depending upon the device that you select, you're going to have a different looking emulator. So
I'm just getting only one.
Yeah.
If you're just getting one, use the one. What's your one?
4.2.2.
Then that's all you have. If you open up this window and it says 4.2. That means you haven't installed the rest of the APIs yet. If you go into this window here, I can come back there. If you go into Window and you go into Sdk Manager, it means you only have, it's only going to show you what you have installed. And when we get, I don't know, do we have an internet access back? Someone tried? Should be back. No, okay. So, if you come in here, whoa. Once we get internet access again, I just checked and I didn't have access. You might have access. If it says not installed, it's not going to show up on your list. That's why I said eventually you want to come in here. Then when you have more things to choose from. So I have 4.03. I have a ton of stuff installed on here. Just because you install it does not make your system run slower. This question has actually already come up. You can install everything. Unless you're using it, not going to ever get loaded. So you can just select between different options, and you have the option available to you. Only problem is when you go to update, there's a lot more to update. So my thing gave out a little error message about not being able to check packages. So I'm going to close it. I don't think the internet's working right now, so I'm not even going to bother with it. I'm going to go back to my virtual device manager though. You used to say AVD. If yours says Android AVD, that stands for Android Virtual Device Manager. New. I'm going to call this one Emulator 4. Device is going to be, I don't know, I'll just select a device here. And let me run the 2.33. I'll run an old one because I have it on here. And then the keyboard, hardware support keyboard, just leave it on the defaults. Yes? Oh, who has the pen drive? Oh, some students are still in line for the pen drive. And I'll leave the pen drive out during lunch break, which is coming up soon, so that we can, we're going to end in probably about 15 minutes here as soon as we get these emulators running. So, leave it on the defaults for right now. What you can add to the emulator: support for the camera, support for USB, support for SD cards. We'll see that probably in our second interactive session, maybe even tomorrow, who knows. We can tweak our emulator to support different things we want to test with our app. This app doesn't really have anything in it. It's just going to say hello world, so we don't necessarily need to change that. Go ahead and press on OK, and you'll see the emulator. I called this one Emulator 4. Should have a green mark over here on the left-hand side. If it does have a green mark, you're set to go. And that's all you have to do. So you come back over here, click on Hello Today. Either go run, and then it's going to come out and it says run as, or run as an Android application. Or you can go right mouse click, go into the run project, and then go run as, and then Android application. Click on OK. Give it a few minutes. See my little wheels going around? Give it a few minutes. I have some stuff running on my computer. You'll see a little Android guy show up in your taskbar eventually. My Android's not there yet. I have recording software running right now, though. Yes?
Yeah, we do.
Hold on a second. Let me pause this for a moment and see what your problem is. Pause cap. The Android emulators take up a lot of CPU time, and they take up a lot of energy and memory. And depending upon how much memory you have on your system, if you're running with a 4 gig system, you're going to have problems if you have other stuff loaded. I have 8 gigs on this system, and I have nothing loaded. Well, I do have loaded. I have heavy-duty recording software being loaded right now. However, I'm having an issue, so my emulator's not going to load right now. That's what I suspect. So I'm going to sit here and wait, give it a few more minutes, but what's going to end up happening eventually is you're going to get an out-of-memory error, you're going to get some sort of situation that occurs. This is the biggest complaint about this development environment. The built-in emulators are slow, and they're memory intensive, and they're very faulty. So it might make better sense to kill the project if you can kill the project. I'm going to force quit my project, actually, because I don't feel like dealing with it. And I'm not going to send a report. I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to bring up my project one more time. Yeah?
I'm just curious, how much memory do you have?
I have 8 gigs on mine, but I'm running recording software.
Oh,
I recommend 6, 8. If you have 4 gigs, it will work, but you're going to run like a snail and you're going to have memory issues. If you have anything else open, close your email programs, close your Word program, close PDF files, close everything, and you'll get faster speed. It's running an emulator on top of an emulator. So if I, let me show you a trick, however. And for those of you who are interested, I will, at the end of today, run you through that because it's going to take too long for this group. There's choices so you can use third-party emulators. I'm going to use an x86 emulator through VirtualBox. So I'm going to demonstrate the running of this program so you can see it work, because I don't know if I'm going to get my emulator to show up. If your emulator does show up, you'll get a black box that looks like an iPhone. Anybody have it yet? Yeah, some people do. So you know what I'm talking about. This little thing, this little picture of a phone shows up on the screen. And it looks like an emulator. But let me show you another emulator. This is another choice you have. If you're going to get into this type of development, you're going to go the VirtualBox route eventually. I'm sorry? It's much better. Watch this. Okay, so my Android emulator doesn't run too well. The reason why I'm using VirtualBox is because with my recording software, because I video record all this, it doesn't run. It's just the recording software is taking up at least 4 or 5 gigs of my memory. I don't have anything left over after that because it's caching all this stuff at like an hour. But long story short, VirtualBox, free just like Parallels. It's a virtual emulation. I have an ISO image that's an Android emulator, Froyo 2.33. I'm going to start it right here. Actually, it's 2.37. This will even run slower now with my recording software running. At the end of today, I will set people up with this. I have the files down. Actually, I have to download the files. It might not be till tomorrow morning that I can actually put them on a disk for you.
So do we need internet connection for your show?
Nope, no internet. Well, right now you do. To download it, to install it, you need an internet connection. To run it, you don't. I'm running it without an internet connection right now. Actually, I'm running everything without an internet. You don't need an internet connection for your built-in Android emulators either. But see, this one is going to look very similar. This is what your other emulator sort of looks like. A little black box comes up. This one's a tablet. In fact, it's for this guy. So, of course, it doesn't look like that, but it looks like that. So you load up the emulator separately. If you're going to take this route, you're going to load up the emulator separately outside of the Android. This is not an Android SDK emulator. I'm going to go to a terminal prompt, and I'm going to connect the emulator through a little script that I put together, and I'll give you the script. It's really easy. It's just avd connect. See, it says connected. So I'm connecting my Avd Manager to this, and now this is part of my Avd. It becomes like one of my built-in emulators. Now I'm going to go over and run the project. Actually, I don't need this one open up anymore. So now I'm going to right mouse click, run it as a as an Android application. See, I have the messages down at the bottom, but instead of it saying out of memory, in a few minutes it's going to pop up a little dialog box and allow me to pick the emulator. See, it's launching. So it's waiting. Building Workspace. There we go. I have this little box that pops up. And that's the emulator I tried to run a few minutes ago. And it failed. Well, actually, it's got a little question mark. It didn't really fail. I aborted it. I didn't let it start. If I had waited long enough, the thing probably would have loaded, but it would have been like after lunch, probably by the time that loaded. So now I'm going to click on this one because I want to load it on this one here. And this one is this guy here in the background that I just loaded. I'm going to press on OK. Now if I come back over here, I'm going to see it loading up. It says, hello today, today is the day. This is the string that loads up in the emulator. And this is the application name that loaded up in the bar that was at the top of the emulator. So if I stop this here and I can take a look, go to my applications folder of my emulator, and I can see that the icon has changed. What was this thing called? Today? Oh, it was called Hello Today. So here it is. Now I have my beautiful icon that I added to Hello Today in here. So this is a makeshift way of getting the emulators to work. I have to do this because I can't run my recording software and the emulator simultaneously. When I turn off the recording, I can show you what the emulator looks like. Or if you wait long enough on your system, and if you have enough memory, your emulator will load up. It will look just like this, but it'll be a smaller window because this is a tablet. Yours will be like looking like a phone probably. You'll have some buttons on there so you can run the app. So it basically allows you to run the app. This is a nice solution if you're running on a system that has very low memory. So, and I will see if I can get you guys to run that. Yes?
In the AVD, I turned down my memory options. And then I was able to get it to launch.
Oh, good, because you're having memory issues then. Yeah.
So is there a minimum spec for memory?
It depends on your app. If you turn it down too low, you're not running, your app will run slower. So I think the default, let me see, go into Avd Manager. So he was mentioning, and this is something you guys can do as well, go in and edit the emulator. Where it says memory options down over here, you can turn it down to something. It's pretty low right now. I don't know. What did you put it to? 256?
I was playing around. I put it at 512.
Oh, 512? Let's see, 512. I'll put it on 512. Internal storage, actually it doesn't really matter. I have enough RAM space. SD card. So now my emulator here. Actually, you can start the emulator here as well. All you do is press the start button. If you want to see what this emulator looks like, you can launch it. I don't know if mine's really going to launch though. Well, oh, there it is. There it is. All right. So once you leave it launched, you can run it if it's launched. Otherwise, you can set the project to run in this emulator and just leave the emulator up and launched once it's launched. But look at how long this is going to take. A little bit longer than my VirtualBox one, but I did lower the memory, so it might actually load. So the memory that you're lowering is how much this emulator is allocating on your total system. Most people that get into this will get 8 gigs of RAM. It makes your life easier if your system's upgradable. And even when you do, it depends on what you're doing with it simultaneously. If you're working on a 4 RAM system, you have half the amount of resources that you really need for this. Memory intense. And it's the emulators that are very memory intense. So, see, this hasn't even loaded yet. I seriously doubt this thing is actually going to load within the hour, actually. So, we'll just leave it alone. Huh?
It's taking so much time.
It will take, it's normal, it will take an extremely long amount of time. It will take half the amount of time if I turn my recording off. On your system, it'll take about 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, probably. That's why people go the VirtualBox route. It took 2 seconds. And you know it's loading if you see this little Android guy in the lower, on the taskbar, or on your launch bar, quick launch, depending upon what you're using, what operating system you're on. It looks the same if you're on a Mac or if you're on a PC. I'm going to kill this because it's not gonna load in my. Did yours finally load?
Yeah.
Yeah. Depends on your system. I got some heavy duty recording stuff loaded, so mine's not gonna work. And also, if you're on a PC, if you're on a Mac system and you're loading a PC system through the parallels, and you're trying to run an emulator inside of that, forget it. Never gonna work. So, which half you probably aren't doing because you can run the tools on the native operating system that you're running on. All right, now I'm going to stop this recording, and we will finish this after lunch. We're going to take a lunch break, but I have a few things to announce before the lunch break, so stop the recording.